this episode, I have the privilege of chatting with Chad Sowash, who many of you know as the co host of Chad and Cheese podcast. Chad and I discuss a bunch of topics at the intersection of AI and talent, including the importance of focusing on the problem rather than the solution, implementing universal design in AI, and shifting metrics from traditional ones in recruiting, like time to hire, to revenue impact and attrition rates. We also highlight that AI will not replace jobs, but those who understand and leverage AI will have a competitive advantage. As you'll hear in each episode, I ask each of my esteemed guests what they recommend to elevate one's AIQ. I hope you enjoy my chat with Chad. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Elevate Your AIQ. I'm your host, Bob Pulver. With me today is my friend Chad Sowash. It is an honor to have you, Chad. Thanks for being here.
An honor. That's a very deep word, Bob. It's a very, very deep word.
You have quite the following in the podcast and talent realm. So yeah, it is an honor to have you.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, for being here for 25 years, I better, or I haven't been doing my job.
Right. No, it's definitely worth a listen.
Oh yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your background. I know you haven't been podcasting your whole career. You started doing a variety of other things, and so just for those who don't know you that well, just a quick little TLDR.
Sure. Yeah. So before I got into this space, I was actually in radio for a short amount of time, in promotions, advertising, those types of things, sales, business development. I was dragged kicking and screaming. Not really. I gleefully came into the recruitment tech space in September of 1998. Recruiter called me and say, "Hey, have you heard of this thing called the internet?" I'm like, "I'm on it right now." I was literally at my job. I was doing some work. And I joined Monster.com before they were actually Monster.com. So I'm dating myself. That's how long I've been in the industry. That's how long I've been steeped in tech and the recruitment industry. Went from there to Direct Employers Association, where I was a VP, and we actually built that startup into an organization that worked directly with global VPs of talent acquisition, and much of it was around tech. Our whole focus was tech because that was kind of the love language of TA. You know, it was new, it was interesting, it was exciting, it was more efficient than taking paper resumes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I was working with the AT&Ts, the Boeings, the Lockheed Martins, and some of the biggest companies in the world. Also built the National Labor Exchange, working with those Fortune 500 companies plus, and federal government, state governments, just a bunch of pseudo governmental entities as well, the National Association of State Workforce Agencies. Then I ejected out of there. I was the chief experience officer over at Recruit Military. They were acquired, and then I was there through transition. Ronstad scooped me up for a couple of years as I built their very first veteran hiring program for their RPO customers. So I was with RSR, and we serviced organizations like Ford Motor Company. So I was really the tip of the spear in building Ford Motor Company's veteran hiring program. After 2 years, ejected out of there, revived my consulting practice, and reached out to a good friend of mine, Joel Cheeseman. He was just starting his startup, and I said, "Hey, look, I've been out of the speaking game for about 2 years. You've been doing the same with your heads down with this new tech. Let's start podcast just as a branding exercise." We did that, and about 6 months later, it exploded, and that was in March of 2017. And in January of 2019, it was so much of a hit, I went full time on the podcast, and kind of like the consulting and advisory, tech advisory, and those things took a back seat. Now today, we're speaking into a mic pretty much all over the world, whether it's on podcasts or we're on stages, and then we're also advising separately. We're advising startups. I have a portfolio of about 14 startups right now. Work directly with investors, angel investor myself. So that's kind of like the short term of how I got to where we are today.
First of all, it's nice to hear that you don't have to take a sort of linear path in people's careers, and I think everything going on labor market and fears about advancing technology, which have always existed. You've sort of bobbed and weaved,
Yeah.
and just found things that were interesting to you, found things that were rewarding to you. I know I like to say that I've had sort of a lattice versus a ladder kind of career myself, in and out of big enterprise and startups, and it just definitely keeps things interesting.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, when you wear that many hats, and how do you keep up with everything? It just seems overwhelming. I guess we've always had information overload, or at least the last decade, but it just seems hard to keep up
Yeah.
with everything.
Yeah, I mean, go-to sources are literally inside sources. We're lucky. We're lucky enough, both of us, to have more than 25 years in the industry itself. So we have just a vast network of individuals who will reach out to us, and they'll give us intel before it even comes out on the wire. So just like Bullhorn acquired text kernel just yesterday, I knew a few days ago. Right. So people are getting in touch with us to let us know what's happening in the market so we can get revved up. We can get pretty much our brains revved up to actually have a conversation around it. Then there are the usual suspects that are just literally just HR sources, and then technology sources, not just in the U.S. but in the EU, and just all over the place. So yeah, it is a fire hose to some extent, but there's a prioritization of the sources, and if it's coming straight from the horse's mouth, that means a lot. If it's coming from somebody who's in an organization but they're telling us anonymously, then we have to double, triple, quadruple source it to make sure that they're not bullshitting us,
Yeah.
because that happens. But at the end of the day, it is a fire hose. But I tell you what, there's nothing more rewarding than having somebody say, "Hey, look, I listen to your show. We do 3 to 4 shows a week. I listen to your show every Friday because I know that I'll get the top to bottom of what happened this week in the industry."
Visionary voices, bold breakthroughs. This is Shalley's Alley, where top recruiting minds spill their best kept secrets live every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Raw, unfiltered conversations on sourcing, hiring, and the future of talent, where we ask the tough questions no one else will. Tune in and level up.
And that is very rewarding to me and to Joel. And we actually have people in training for onboarding or people into organizations who have them listen to our stuff and say, look, and first and foremost, this is not safe for work, so there's going to be some bad words and so on and so forth. Although, listen to what they have to say. These jokers kind of know their stuff.
No, absolutely agree with that statement. You know, there were there's a bunch of recent headlines around what people need to do to get up to speed with what's going on in the industry. The different use cases. There's certainly, I guess, I feel like people are now they don't know sources to trust anymore. But certainly, you've got to
Yeah,
experiment, and you've got to. And we'll get into this a little bit over the course of the conversation, but you easily get into this sort of human centric nature of what AI should be. I think about my nieces in college doing internships and stuff like that, and it's just like, yeah, the quicker you can get up to speed on what sources to trust and how to actually use these tools, the better off you're going to be. So there's an aspect of, I guess, AI literacy and readiness that plays into all of this, right?
yeah, I agree. I mean, and the thing is, you have to use these things. You have to get out and use, Chat GPT, Gemini, Mistral, Claude, um, and also realize that they should be used at first as literally low level advisors, right? Entry level advisors. Um, we our expectations are way too high for AI at this point. It is ridiculous how people think that the AI should be perfect, and it's like, look, do you know what it's trained on? Do you understand what it's actually doing? I mean, hell, the people that are actually building these things are baffled in some cases on how the outcomes or the outputs are coming out of some of these models, right? So for us to have any type of expectation that this should be perfect is ridiculous. It's training off of human behavior in many cases, and we are the least perfect thing on this planet, for goodness sakes. I always say AI is a puppy. You gotta train it so it doesn't piss on the carpet, right? And that's exactly what's happening. You gotta train
Yeah.
that puppy. You gotta train that AI.
Do you think that, like, who would you trust to ask a question to, and how does that compare to what you're getting? Or when you think about stuff that you might like outsource to someone else, is it acting in that capacity in some logical way? I mean, I guess I correlate that to players that think you're cheating if you used generative AI to customize your resume.
When you're using something as an advisor, you have to check it yourself because you're still responsible for the output. So if it's bullshitting, it's just making stuff up on a resume or anything, right? It's still on you to ensure that it's true, right? Because there still is that trust factor. Platforms that are out there that will apply to millions of jobs for you, that it'll literally look at the job description, look at your resume, make something up, and then apply with a new resume every single time. Is that bad? Well, yeah, it's bad if it's lying, right? If it's saying some things that you can do that you can't, experience or skill sets or what have you. So, it's still on you, the human being.
So when I think about like the end-to-end talent life cycle, so, applicant to alumni, and I think about all the ways that AI is being used or potentially being used. And I think about, the value proposition from some of the solution providers. Part of, putting our critical thinking caps on is not just us as individuals, but us collectively as teams or, leaders in an organization. And so I think about, just because you can use AI for a particular use case doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And so again, I mean, I don't want to keep going back to the shiny object syndrome, but it just seems like this is I've got this shiny new hammer situation, and look at all these nails, right? So like, is there things that you see that you're just like,
yeah,
like what the fuck are you doing?
all the time. I mean, all the time. You go to any of the events or conferences that are out there, and you look at the booths, and a lot of the booths have nothing but terms that are shiny object terms, right? They don't lead to outcomes. They're not focused on driving solutions. They might say solutions in them, but the actual content of what it's saying has nothing to do with solutions. It has to do with bright, shiny, pop, fluff. I mean, just nothing there. And I think that's, the focus for anybody who's in talent acquisition, talent management, doesn't matter. It's got to be the outcome. One of the things that I think I heard here recently, and I think I was at Paradox's Innovation Day, was Aaron Matos said, we fall in love with the problem. It might have been Adam Godson. One of those guys said, we fall in love with the problem. And that's what we have to do as leaders in talent acquisition and talent management and HR. We've got to, first and foremost, identify what the problem is. And then we have to fall in love with that problem, because we have to be able to know it inside and out to be able to fix it. And we don't just go and say, oh, I need AI. Where do I plug AI in? That's not what leaders do. Okay. So I think that's the biggest key for me, is don't fall in love with a term. Fall in love with your problem so that you truly understand that problem inside and out. And then you can prospectively look for solutions and outcomes that just get rid of that problem altogether.
Yeah. No, I definitely appreciate that approach. I think sometimes people maybe get tripped up. It's hard sometimes, right? Because you get, even we see these survey results. Oh, well, people don't want to talk to, an AI. They want to talk to a human. Well, who are you surveying? Because this other survey said the exact opposite. Yeah. If it helps me get off the phone that much quicker, or I don't have to worry about, getting dressed because I can talk to this, conversational AI and still give you all the answers. Or, maybe you're, neurodiverse, candidate, and you have trouble with eye contact, so you're not going to interview well. I love this alternate path. I mean, in situations like that, I mean, do you design alternate or two different paths for that part of the journey, the candidate experience, or do you just have to pick one of the two and lean towards?
Pace of change in the world of business is fast, and that drives incredible complexity for the world of human resources.
Welcome to the HR Data Lab's Brown Bag Lunch, a series of conversations with experts inside and outside the world of human resources on how to innovate, measure, and evolve our practices.
Our goal is to help provide you with practical examples of how HR has to change and to meet in this complex business environment.
Every week, we'll talk to new and different voices on all aspects of human resources.
And guess what? You get to chat with us live.
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 So they can answer questions or they can ask us questions.
They can ask, they can answer, whatever they want. They get to talk with us live.
That's awesome.
Sometimes we geek out on the data and technology that underlie the processes that drive the world of HR.
But the conversations are always insightful and fun. So please enjoy the HR Data Labs Brown Bag Lunch.
What happens when employees behave badly? Boy, we could do an entire TV show, maybe a Netflix special on that. Well, Ryan and I sat down and recorded episodes for FAMA, and we asked practitioners, give us your most outrageous story. The sales leader that brings cocaine to work, whatever. Just bring us the outrageous, and it is funny. So if you need a laugh, which we all do from time to time, search for workplace misconduct wherever you get your podcast, and you'll find it. And trust me, you will laugh and cry, but you'll definitely laugh. All right. Thank you.
The technology, I mean, to me, it seems like there's some tough decisions that need to be made, and maybe it depends on who's actually the decision maker.
I think it's a lot easier than we make it. And humans try to make things complex, because when we make them complex, then, oh, look at us, we're doing hard jobs. When, we really should be keeping it simple. In this case, there are different levels, right? So for the applicant tracking system, let's start at the beginning. The applicant tracking system, there was one process methodology for everybody, no matter whether you were a bank teller or you were the VP of that bank. It was one process, right? Just for the application. Then after that, then they had to figure out, okay, what do we do next, right? There's no reason for that in 2024. Now we can have different process paths for all of these individuals. If you're high volume, and you can have a few screener questions. If you're good on that, then we put you into another path, right? It's really very simple. If you are that VP or you are in management or something like that, well, then your application process is going to be different, because the needs to understand that individual is going to be much different. Not because they're not an individual contributor. They are managing individual contributors, trying to fold them into a team. So, there should be different paths, and there's no reason to just have one path first and foremost. And then secondarily, you talk about universal design. That is the key. We need to focus on universal design, which means individuals who, may be hard of hearing, hard of sight. They might have some cognitive disability or what have you. We need to focus on building for them, because if we build for them, it works for everybody. And that's the beautiful thing. And I always go back to kind of like things that people can understand, is that, they started building ramps one day, right, for accessibility. And then next thing you know, people who don't need the ramps are taking the ramps because it's easier, right? Instead of taking the steps, I'm taking the ramp. Okay, great. That's awesome. That's universal design. Very easy things. But if we develop for that group, then it's universally good for everybody.
Yeah, we can build and design to, some of those common denominators where everybody benefits. I think that's ideal, and I think that ties to, I guess it ties to the responsible AI sort of realm as well. Whether you're talking about trying to anticipate legislation, which I always say, well, if you can check all the boxes in terms of responsibility by design, fairness, transparency, bias mitigation. If you can do it to comply with the EU AI Act, you're probably in good shape. Other jurisdictions, but I also think it makes good business sense. There's always people that are maybe like on the cusp. Maybe they don't consider themselves to have a disability, and yet they're not blind, but their vision's not great, or whatever. So you always have those options,
Right.
and which people appreciate because it does enhance the experience. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about was the metrics that talent teams are still measuring themselves by, or what new metrics we should be looking at, because I think that plays into the motivations of a lot of the people who are playing key roles in the talent life cycle, right? So if you look at a recruiter, if you're still just worried about throughput, you're still worried about time to hire, and the efficiency of the funnel, your instinct is going to be to trust the output of some of these tools.
Hmm.
So if you combine that with like everyone reporting on productivity improvements with AI and automation, you know, we work in teams, right? So first of all, individual productivity doesn't tell you nearly the whole story of whether this is a success, right? And so I guess I wonder about how we get to overall, value. Did you incrementally add value to the process, to the experience? What have you really improved? Because it just seems like individual productivity is like it's like the vanity metric of AI right now.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I mean, you can have superstars, but with a superstar who can't play on a team is in many cases a cancer, right? So you have to be able to take a look at. I agree on individual statistics and performance, just so that you can manage to that person specifically, because that team is going to be many different people with many different holes in their game, and you have to help them close those holes in their game. But I think to your first question around talent acquisition and the metrics, we focus on time to hire, cost per hire, and shit that the C-suite just doesn't care. They don't care about, because it means nothing to them. What do they care about? They care about lost revenue. They care about attrition that leads to lost revenue, right? They care about productivity or lack of productivity or a drop in productivity that goes to what? Lost revenue. So it has to really impact the bottom line before the C-suite really cares. And HR and TA have been talking about these terms that nobody's cared about for a very long time, and they're still wondering why they're not allowed at the big kids table. That's why, guys. That's why you have VPs of talent acquisition. We just talked to Matt Lavery earlier this, or just dropped a podcast today. He's from UPS. He's been at UPS for 27 years. He's tying to revenue, to attrition, to these different things. So he's seen by the C-suite as an asset, not a liability, not a cost center, right? So, we have to understand those things. We have to, again, fall in love with the problem. What's the problem? We're having problems getting salespeople into seats fast enough. Okay, that's not the problem. The problem is every day a salesperson is not in that seat, the company loses X amount of revenue. It's your job to work with the CRO to find out what that number is, so that you can report on it to the CEO and to the rest of the C-suite and the CRO and say, hey, look, if we had this tech, we could push salespeople much faster into seats. They would be more qualified. They'd be exactly what you're looking for, versus the scatter shot approach that we're taking right now. There are great examples that are out there. Amy Butchko, when she was working for SAIC, she worked with the CRO and did exactly what I just said. That example was not an example. That is a true life story. Then you have, Jeff Lackey, who headed up, global talent for CVS, and 90% of his budget came from other departments. He went back to them and said, hey, look, here's what my budget is. I can only do this very small amount for what you need. If you need more and you want to focus more on getting talent in faster, I'm going to need more budget. 90% of his budget came from other departments, not directly from, the budgetary giver
Right.
at CVS, for goodness sakes. We have to focus on these things. Amazon leaked a letter. Somebody leaked it, that they lost $8 billion with a B, $8 billion in lost revenue because of what? Because of attrition. These are numbers that make sense to whom? The C-suite. These are the types of numbers that we need to be pushing to the C-suite. So again, when we fall in love with the problem, we better understand the problem, and then we can better articulate to the C-suite and to the rest of the stakeholders what we need to do and what needs to happen. Then we become an asset instead of a liability and quote unquote a cost center.
I see everyone focusing on productivity, and look, if you can improve, team productivity, morale goes up. There's lots of other, indirect and ancillary benefits of doing that. But I just think about all the potential of AI beyond automation, right? And you think about,
Yeah.
improved decision making. I just saw a report from Data Camp last year they did one just on data literacy, and this year they expanded it to be data and AI literacy. And some of it was
Hmm.
logical from a more traditional AI sense, from a like a descriptive, operational, and predictive AI sense. You know, the last generation of AI, like the IBM Watson. And so, in that respect, I agreed with them that AI literacy is almost an extension of data literacy. But generative AI, I see as a little bit different because I feel like the learning curve is actually much simpler, and you don't need to have um, a more technical sort of mindset necessarily to understand how to use generative AI and make use of it. Just because of the nature of AI is part of the UI and UX, and it's approachable, just like it would be because you're having a conversation with it in large part, and because it can literally coach you on how to use it while you're using it. So I just feel like it's not like you're trying to
Hmm.
learn, to be a data scientist or, software engineer. So I don't know. I guess I feel like that's why everyone should get started. To your point earlier, just start playing with some of these tools and figure out what, you know, if you combine your own, sort of research and your own experimentation, whether it's in your personal endeavors or your
Hmm.
professional ones, if you have a good community and a good network inside an organization, then share those learnings. I mean, that's part of the point of this podcast as well, is to for people to share best practices and lessons learned, and this works, this doesn't, try this, try that. I mean, you've been helping me set up this the AV for this podcast based on your background. So it just seems like there's just so much incredible opportunity that I don't want. Look, I can be a victim of shiny object syndrome.
Welcome to the Hire Her podcast, where women in talent call all the shots. We know, another recruiting podcast, just what the industry needs. Okay, but hear us out. You ever spend hours sourcing that perfect candidate, but they end up ghosting you harder than your hinge date? Or finally, you get that hiring manager feedback, only for them to, of course, say, "Can we see more candidates?" Lame, right? But let's talk about what's really lame in the industry. How is it that 65% of recruiters are brilliant women, yet most of the decision makers look like a convention for middle-aged dudes named Brad?
That's where we come in. Hire Her isn't just another podcast about hiring trends you already heard like 50 times this week. We're here to elevate women in talent, share their career journeys, and make sure they take the lead. Because let's face it, if recruiting is the backbone of every company, why are we still fighting for a seat at the table? So whether you're a recruiter, a talent leader, or just someone trying to swim through the sausage fest of TA leadership, we got you, girl. Welcome to Hire Her, the recruiting podcast where women's voices aren't just heard, but they're leading the conversation.
So subscribe now, because middle management Brad sure as hell isn't going to do it for you.
Myself, but we've just
Oh yeah.
got to be aware of it and acknowledge it and push past it.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I have heard it a million times, but I'm definitely going to say it. I don't think that AI is going to take somebody's job. It's going to be somebody who understands AI who's going to take your job. Much like back in the olden days, let's say, when the internet first popped out and people started using search engines, the recruiters who started to understand Boolean strings and they started building Boolean strings, they outperformed all the other recruiters because they knew how to leverage the technology to get to what they wanted faster. It's the exact same thing, right? Whether you call it prompt engineering, whatever you want to call it, it's going to change in the next 5 minutes anyway because of the velocity of technology. The key is that you stay in tune with what is going on in the market.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I try to sometimes I bounce back and forth between different analogies, right? Like, is this like the advent of social media? Is it like the internet? Is it like when you first got a computer? Uh, and on some level, it almost doesn't matter because all of these things exist. At least probably the majority of the workforce
Mhm.
already has grown up with a computer, even if it wasn't a touch screen or an
Right.
internet connected. Yeah, right.
VIC
My
20.
Commodore 64, I recall. Um, how do we make sure that we sort of mitigate the weak links inside a company? when it comes to using AI, and how quickly can you at least put some policies in place so that you've got, you have an adult, sort of not an adult in the room, but you've got to you've got to trust people, but you've got to educate them to build that help build that trust, right? You can't just say
Yeah.
we're gonna monitor, because you don't want to monitor every everything that people are doing, but there are risks, and you have to think about this with from a data privacy and cybersecurity type of perspective. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me at all if people started incorporating responsible AI, compliance training, when they start doing, onboarding, and maybe annually, because this is changing so fast. But you've got to put some guardrails in place, and then trust
Yeah,
people.
I think the advanced way of using these tools is first and foremost, and I say this till I'm blue in my face, but blow up your current process methodology because it probably sucks. And then start infusing some of these technologies into that so that there's not really a choice per se whether somebody uses it or not. It's actually just part of the process, and allow, like, let's say just for scheduling, whether it's internal scheduling or external for interviews, allow the AI to take a piece of that. Maybe, it's an AI assistant that's actually on your phone that is part of your system, it's native to your system. Then allow that to do the work. How many hours do people spend, a week scheduling shit, right? There's no reason for that. That is administrative. Allow the system to do that. Just little things, internally, externally. It doesn't really matter. And then you can get into some of the deeper things through talent management, retention, internal mobility, learning and development. I mean, there's just so much that we can do if we start to blend this in, right? And again, as an advisor and or with specific guardrails. If you're talking to vendors, and they are domain specific, and this is much different when we're taking a look at like ChatGPT or Gemini or those big humongous large language models. They're taking in all the data from all over the place. You have domain specific companies who are just focusing on your data, and they can crunch that data and then do learnings from the behaviors from that. And that is going to be less risky, that's for sure, first and foremost. And secondarily, it's going to be something that you can own as a model. And that to me seems very sexy, right? To be able to own your own model, which is literally trained off of your data. I think that to me is the most compelling.
I think there's a lot of use cases where that is going to be the appropriate, sort of design or how to use some of this stuff, because you just, well, without getting into too much of the technical details, I think there's a lot of cost associated if you try to, run, some open source, models, but you've also got risk if you're using, sort of closed and black box, kind of solutions,
Mm-hmm.
and you may have to use a whole bunch of different tools depending on the specific use case, even within an enterprise. Just like, if you're using multiple, cloud providers, for your infrastructure. So I think
Oh yeah.
there's some parallels there. I guess one of the other topics was around like the average person, just like with all these other no code, low code tools. I mean, the average person can now be a builder, not just a consumer and a user of these technologies, which just sort of elevates, obviously, the flexibility that people have, and you can learn it faster, and you can customize it better, and you have that control. But it also elevates the importance of, training on, responsibility and ethics and, fairness and all of that, especially when it comes to, decisions that impact human beings and their livelihoods and their careers. So,
Yes.
I mean, when you think about as an angel investor and as a startup advisor, how do you think about those kind of aspects of what people are building, so that, in part, so that it's not just another shiny object, but my guess is it's part you're solving a real business problem, but you're also doing it in a responsible way.
Many cases, founders or even CEOs of some of these bigger core industries, they need to have experts in the room, which hopefully they have some that are already on staff. But then they also need eyes on from people from the outside, right? Because in many cases, whether you're an expert or not, sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, and you need to have those outside eyes to be able to come in and prospectively point out different risk areas and different prospective solution paths and things of that nature. So I think whether you are a startup or you are a company who's been in the space for a very long time, a tech company who's been in the space for a very long time, and you're building product, you need to focus on the risk associated to that. And then obviously, if you're a buyer of those products, you have to do your due diligence. And that's one of the things that we have been very bad at over the years in TA and HR, is doing the appropriate, performing the appropriate due diligence. And number one, and saying, oh, well, I didn't get what I paid for. Well, it wasn't a part of your RFP, for God's sakes. Number one. Number two, you plan to buy this tech and plunk it down and then walk away from it. And then 5 years later, you're wondering why it's not working the way it should. Well, because the entire landscape, workforce landscape, technology landscape, everything shifts. And with the current velocity of tech, it's going to be shifting even faster. So you can't just buy something and walk away from it. You have to buy it, you have to audit it, you have to nurture it, you have to continue to implode the current processes, maybe with the exact same systems, and rebuild processes. This isn't a lazy person's game. This is one of love for the problem, and the problems will continue to pop up. You just have to pay attention.
When you think about the concept of an AIQ, what comes to mind when you first saw elevate your AIQ? What did you think of?
Yeah, I mean, it's like any other subject that's out there to have an IQ and an expertise around. It just makes sense. And I also think it brings the focus to learning, education, the IQ piece of it, right? Which is the most important. We have people that are out there that are literally pulling their hair out. Obviously not me, pulling their hair out because they can't understand what's going on around them. Well, they can't understand because they're not paying attention, number one. And I understand there are leaders that are out there that are just way too damn busy to jump into these things. That's great. You have resources. This is priority. This should be priority. And this should always be a part of the all hands conversations that you have with your teams. What's happening out there that's new? What's the new tech that we could prospectively, use as a piece of our day, right? Or what are the new threats? I mean, do SWOT on these things, for goodness sakes. I mean, to me, it feels like we've just gotten lazy and we're looking for an easy button to hit and then walk away, and then 4 years later come back and say, why doesn't this work anymore?
When you talk to organizations, I mean, your comment about leadership, does leadership even know what we're talking about here and where the opportunity is? That was actually a really important call out in this. I think it was a Deco group just released something that talked about this. It seemed like, based on that, at least that survey, was actually a core problem, because even when people were bringing these as ideas and business cases to leadership, they can't get their head around it because they haven't themselves taken the time to play around. Like if you actually kept track of your saving, go back into this productivity thing. Oh, look at all these people saving 30% of the time. Okay, well, what exactly are you? Because right now so let's say you're saving 30% of your time. You're still getting paid for 100%, right? So now you have this a surplus of time. Your most valuable asset. What are you doing with it? I mean, you're asking the company to automate things to make things simpler and then reinvest some of that savings in you. I mean, are you taking that initiative yourself? If you're saving 5 hours a week, what are you doing with that 5 hours? Are you binging Netflix, or are you using at least a fraction of that to go and play around with Claude or Perplexity or Gemini, whatever?
Yeah, I think that one of those things, though, I mean, the 30% time, the first thing that all of this is going to take away should take away, or the administrivia that these people are sinking in every single day, right? Which makes their jobs just hell. For most people. Most people don't like just sitting around doing administrative work. So that 30% that you give back to them should be doing the things that they're passionate about, right? And that's engaging with people, right? Whether it's bringing them in the organization, keeping them in the organization, helping them with education within the organization, whatever it is, that's what we're here for in the first place. But then, yes, there should always be an R&D element of your organization as a practitioner. You should have somebody who spearheads that and is your right hand when it comes to uh, the R&D side of the house, innovation side of the house, right? That's the biggest key, because how can you see around corners if you're not even looking?
I feel like this is a prime opportunity to start crowdsourcing ideas around how to use AI, automation, and any advanced technology.
Oh
Because
yeah.
I feel like people they've been in their roles, they've progressed. Whether it's on a lattice like you and I, or it's up the ladder. Um, they've a lot of times been sort of laser focused on that because you didn't know what other skills they have. You didn't know, you've never tapped into that collective intelligence and that collective creativity of the organization. And now is
Mm-hmm.
the time. I mean, take advantage. You could say, well, oh, this is shadow IT and it's thus a problem, but is it though? It's not if you can really understand what people are thinking about and the types of approaches that people have taken to their prompting and what tools they've used, or maybe even multiple sort of agents or co-pilots, and you've streamlined some type of
Mm.
workflow to connect them. These are learnings that other people could take advantage of, and so I just think there's tremendous potential to unleash, the human creativity and just the empathy and all these other human skills that are actually the most durable at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, this all comes down to leadership, though. I mean, it really does. Talking to Lieven von Nievenhausen just a couple of days ago, and he's the chief digital officer at the House of HR. They own 50 different companies, big organization, right? He is focusing right now on educating his people, top down, right? And that to me is the most important thing. We hear in the news about all these leaders who just can't wrap their head around these very basic ideas like remote work, right? It just won't work because they're set in these traditional mindsets and they can't get out of them. The only thing that we can do is either one of two things. They either start to evolve with the times or they get the hell out, you know? We need new leadership that will evolve and actually change with the landscape instead of demanding that the landscape form around them, because that's not going to happen. So leadership is the key.
Agree. Okay, final question.
Yes.
I haven't booked my trip yet, but probably going back to Nashville for Wreckfest.
Oh, yes.
I'm trying to convince my wife to come with me, but I told her if she comes with me, she's got to come to a distillery with me, which she reluctantly agreed to do. I said it would be fun. But what do you got for me? What recommendations?
Let's take a look at Nashville distilleries, because I mean, the distilleries that I would hit are in Louisville, which are about 2 hours north. So if you want to do that, that's the place, because that's where bourbon is, baby. But yeah, I mean, you've got Tennessee whiskey, which is going to happen, and it's all good. Don't get me wrong, but they've got craft beer there too. If your wife likes those types of libations, it's very nice. They've got great distilleries, Tennessee whiskey, but I am a huge fan of my everyday whiskey is Maker's Mark, and that is an amazing dude. The tour is amazing because it used to be a little town. I mean, literally like a village, and it still is. that she would love that. And then you can go to, you know, some of the bigger ones like Heaven Hill, where you take a look at, they have 40,000 barrels of whiskey, bourbon, in one rick house. 40,000 in one rick house. You step outside and there, you look to the left, there are rick houses as far as you can see. You look to the right, there are rick houses as far as you can see. And I think they have blends of like 96 different whiskeys there. So I mean, the options are there, right? And then Peerless is right downtown. That is a beautiful distillery, small, very good. But yeah, dude, you got options. You got options.
I know there's so many. I did the Bourbon Trail a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, I did not hit Heaven Hill or Maker's Mark. But as you know, I mean, you could probably do 3 Bourbon
Options.
Trail trips and still not hit the same distillery. But yeah, I've been impressed with some of. Normally, I do stick to Kentucky bourbon or stuff that's been aging in your near your other home in Indiana. But Tennessee, even Jack Daniels, which that was what I drank in college, has been coming out with some amazing aged spirits. I didn't know how far that was from Nashville, but that's definitely. I just know that when I went to Wreckfest last year, I didn't give myself nearly enough time to explore.
Definitely give yourself time to explore. Nashville is a wonderful little city. And then Joel and I is just actually we had a Scotland trip, so we went to the Highlands. We were taken to the Highlands. We were able to go to Blair Atoll and have a wonderful distillery tour, and then we went to the Lowlands. So it was we're in Glasgow, went north, and then we were in Edinburgh, and we're in the Lowlands, and we went to Glenkinchie, and I mean, it's just amazing. So if your wife likes any types of whiskeys, start to get her, so mine does now, start to get her, in there. And then next thing you know, you're in Ireland, you're in Scotland. Who knows?
No, I mean, and those countries are amazing. I did listen to your recap of your distillery tour over there. So yeah, it's very, very tempting.
It's a good time.
Chad, this was awesome as usual. Great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me and
thank you
for dropping some knowledge for our audience. Much appreciated.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks everyone for listening. See you next time.
Later.